let us take a very quick look at the current board just to see where our key players are standing right now. Serena Baldwin has officially returned to Port Charles after nearly a decade away, stepping back into town with a brand new face and carrying a massive, life-altering secret. She is pregnant. With her father, Scott Baldwin, mysteriously absent from the canvas at this crucial moment, it is Lucy Coe, the woman who carried Serena as a surrogate and loves her with a fierce maternal devotion, who is stepping up to welcome her home. Meanwhile, completely across town and seemingly in a different universe, Ethan Lovett is currently playing a highly dangerous game of blackmail with Ava Jerome, heavily implying that he is the biological father of Phoebe to keep Ava under his thumb. These feel like two entirely separate orbits, two isolated pockets of drama playing out on different stages. But as we all know, in this town, isolation is always an illusion, and the board is set for these pieces to collide violently. The first future we need to look at connects these seemingly invisible dots in a way that blows up everything we thought we understood. What happens next may be the stunning, game-changing revelation that Ethan Lovett is not actually Phoebe's father at all. This could lead to the massive twist that Ethan is in fact the biological father of the child growing inside Serena Baldwin. Just imagine the narrative goldmine we are looking at here. If that happens, why has Serena kept it such a heavily guarded secret? Perhaps they crossed paths in Europe years ago, sharing a passionate, chaotic, and ultimately hidden romance far away from the prying eyes and heavy expectations of their complicated legacy families. Serena might have returned to Port Charles specifically to find Ethan, hoping to build a family, only to discover him deeply entangled in a dangerous, reckless game with Sonny Corinthos and Ava Jerome. She might be watching from the shadows, terrified of what the man she loves has become. If this is the path we are taking, the immediate danger shifts directly and heavily onto Serena's shoulders. Ava Jerome is absolutely not a woman who takes kindly to being blackmailed, manipulated, or made to look like a fool. If Ava discovers that Ethan has been bluffing about Phoebe all along while his actual pregnant lover is hiding out at Lucy Coe's apartment, Ava will not hesitate to use Serena as ultimate leverage. The bigger consequence may be that Ethan's entire house of cards collapses overnight. He would suddenly have to pivot from being a cunning, untouchable manipulator to a desperate, terrified protector. Who benefits here? Ava, undoubtedly, because she instantly gains the upper hand and the power to destroy Ethan's life. Who is in grave danger? Serena and her unborn child, who become innocent pawns in a mob-adjacent war. The story could be heading toward a high-stakes, breathless standoff where Ethan has to sacrifice his own freedom, his pride, or perhaps even his life to ensure that Serena and their baby remain safe from the crossfire of his own reckless decisions. This path turns a simple paternity mystery into a life or death thriller. But let us pull back the lens and look at a completely different future, one that takes the narrative in a much darker direction. What if Serena's return has absolutely nothing to do with Ethan Lovett's current schemes or any past romance with him? Looking ahead, there is a very real chance that Serena is not returning home to find love or reunite with her family. She is running for her life. 10 years is an incredibly long time to be off the grid. We have absolutely no idea what Serena has been doing, who she has been associating with, or what dark, dangerous corners of the world she has navigated over the last decade. What if the father of her baby is not a familiar, charming rogue, but a highly dangerous, ruthless figure from a European crime syndicate? What if she witnessed something she was never meant to see, and the child she is carrying is the only heir to a blood-soaked empire? In the second future, Serena's pregnancy is not a joyous blessing. It is a ticking time bomb strapped to her chest. She might have fled back to Port Charles because she desperately believes the Baldwin name, her father's legal connections, and the geographical distance can shield her from the monsters hunting her. But Scott is not here to protect her. Lucy is fiercely protective and would move mountains for Serena, but Lucy is a cosmetics executive, not a tactical operative equipped to handle international assassins or seasoned mob enforcers. If this happens, Serena's presence brings a catastrophic, unavoidable threat directly to Lucy's doorstep, endangering everyone in their orbit. The story could be heading toward a massive, action-packed narrative where the entire town has to mobilize to protect one of their own. Imagine the WSB getting involved. Imagine Anna Devane, freshly released from her clinic and looking for a purpose, having to step up to protect Scott's daughter from a shadowy organization that wants the child for their own sinister legacy. This path fundamentally changes Serena from a legacy daughter seeking comfort into a highly targeted, incredibly valuable asset, flipping the entire script of her character's return and plunging Port Charles into an international crisis. Now, let us venture into the third future, and this is the absolute wildest, most unexpected possibility on the map. This is the scenario that almost nobody is talking about, but it could shake the foundations of the town. We know that a mysterious new business executive named Hudson is scheduled to arrive in Port Charles at the end of July. He is described in the Whispers as having mysterious connections, vast wealth, and a major role to play in an upcoming storyline. What if Serena's baby belongs to Hudson? This is the wild card that completely bypasses the established legacy families and introduces a brand new, terrifying dynamic. What if Serena and Hudson have a deeply toxic, incredibly complicated history? Perhaps Hudson is a ruthless corporate shark who used Serena to gain leverage over some international Baldwin assets, and now that she is pregnant, she realizes she is carrying the heir to his corrupt, manipulative empire. Serena might have fled to Port Charles to hide the child from him, believing she could disappear into the fabric of her hometown, only to discover to her absolute horror that Hudson is relocating his entire operation to her very doorstep. If that happens, the psychological warfare we would witness would be nothing short of incredible. Serena would have to pretend she does not know him in public, forcing smiles at Metro Court events, while privately fighting a terrifying, isolating battle to keep her baby out of his controlling hands. This future does not rely on old feuds or established mob ties. It builds an entirely new empire of drama, positioning Serena as the ultimate heroine, fighting against a powerful, untouchable billionaire who holds all the cards. It is unexpected, it is fresh, and it is undeniably thrilling to imagine how she would outsmart a man who seemingly owns everything. If you ask me, while the billionaire wildcard is fascinating and the international thriller is exciting, the path that feels most likely and honestly the most emotionally satisfying for longtime viewers is the first one. I keep coming back to the idea that Ethan Lovett is the father of Serena's baby. It just makes far too much sense from a deeply rooted historical and narrative standpoint. Think about the rich, decades-long history of this canvas. Scott Baldwin and Luke Spencer had one of the most legendary, bitter, and defining rivalries in the history of television. They utterly despised each other, fighting over Laura, over pride, and over the very soul of the town. Now, imagine the absolute poetic justice, the brilliant narrative, irony of Luke's charming, grifting son getting Scott's precious, protected daughter pregnant. It is a writer's dream scenario. The story could be heading toward a generational clash that perfectly echoes the greatest eras of the past, bringing that legendary animosity into the modern day. Ethan is currently operating as a rogue, playing highly dangerous games, much like his father did in his early years. Serena is the grounded, slightly damaged legacy child returning to her roots, carrying the physical manifestation of two warring bloodlines. Their dynamic would be electric, filled with passion, resentment, and undeniable chemistry. Furthermore, tying Serena's pregnancy to Ethan perfectly resolves the messy, confusing Phoebe blackmail storyline. It gives Ethan a profound, undeniable reason to drop his petty vendetta against Ava and forces him to finally grow up. It anchors both of these legacy characters to the canvas in a permanent, deeply meaningful way. If you ask me, the writers are brilliantly setting up a scenario where Ethan has to make the ultimate choice between his grifter lifestyle and stepping up to be the man, the father, and the protector that Serena and their child desperately need him to be. It is classic, character-driven soap opera storytelling at its absolute finest, and it is exactly what the canvas needs right now. But let us look even further down the road, because this story absolutely does not end with a simple paternity reveal or a romantic reunion. If the scenario where Ethan is the father actually happens, The bigger consequence may be the inevitable explosive return of Scott Baldwin. When Scott finally comes back to Port Charles, and we know he will, and discovers that his beloved daughter is not only pregnant, but carrying the grandchild of his mortal enemy, Luke Spencer, the fallout will be absolutely monumental. We are talking about a shockwave that will tear through the entire town, forcing everyone to take sides. What happens next may be an all-out, scorched earth war for custody, control, and family honor. Scott will undoubtedly try to push Ethan out of the picture entirely, perhaps even using his formidable legal prowess to frame Ethan for the crimes he committed against Ava, just to ensure Ethan rots in Pentonville away from his grandchild. Ethan, backed into a terrifying corner and fighting for his flesh and blood, might have to call on the remnants of the Spencer family, perhaps even reaching out to a recovering Lulu, a conflicted Dante, or even Laura Collins herself to help him fight for his child. The future of Port Charles will not just be about who controls the local mob territory or who sits on the hospital board. It will be a bitter, highly emotional war for the soul and the future of the next generation. We are looking at a future where old, deep wounds are ripped wide open, and the legacy of the Spencers and the Baldwins is fought over the crib of an innocent, unborn child. The map of the future is expanding rapidly, guys, and if even half of these incredible possibilities come true, we are in for the emotional ride of a lifetime. The pieces are moving, the storm is gathering, and the future of Port Charles has never looked more thrilling.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.